right, hello again. We are ready to start painting our drawing. We learned in the last step how to do a nice clean outline, how to divide the paper into those 12 sections. You can decide if you wanted to label it with the names or just rely on your brainstorming sheet. I'm going to rely on my brainstorming sheet, so I'm actually going to erase these real quickly. If you decide that you want to have them written in here, just make sure that you erase them before you paint. All right, I'm gonna get set up with my materials. I have the palette. Just a reminder how you take the lid off, put your thumb there, and kind of pull like this. So thumb in the center, pull the tab. So I have my palette, I have my 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. I've got some paint brushes, a fresh thing of water. I have a paper towel or an old rag. I actually put a rag under my paper towel. The paint goes on the paper towel, but some of the moisture goes on the rag. And I have my brainstorming sheet. So I think we're ready to go. I like to always start with my primaries. So I'm gonna take some yellow. And remember, it's easier to put a little bit out at a time. I can't get it back in the tube, but I can keep adding color. So I'm gonna start with a little, and I'll start with my red, my yellow, and my blue. Notice how I leave spaces between them so I can do some color mixing. Red, yellow, blue. Okay. I always like to start with yellow before my water gets gross and mixed, and before my brushes get kind of dirty. I'll use the yellow. I'm going to pick a nice brush to do a little bit of a detailed area. I like a round brush for the edges, and then I'll use a flat brush for the larger spaces. If it's the first time you've used it, you have to rinse it in the water. So I picked one that has a point. This is what we call a round, and it's going to let me sneak into all those little detailed areas. So I'm going to grab this, get some of my paint, and double, triple checking, I'm going to do the background in this top section. So I like to point my brush at the edge of something, especially if it's a detail. Plant my hand so it's nice and steady, so I'm not wobbling like that. My hand is planted, and I can just kind of drag the point of that brush along the straight edge. So I'm going to fill in this section. Notice how I'm rotating my paper as needed. It's easier for the hand to move in certain directions than others, so I like to make it easy on myself. Some people say that this means artists are lazy. I just think they're interested in being effective. What's the most effective way that I can paint this picture? So I'm turning my paper again so I can plant my hand. Make sure you're not putting it in wet paint, but on a nice dry surface, plant your hand, and then point your brush at the line you're trying to go up against. All right, I'm going to fill this section. If I want to, I can switch to a larger brush for these larger areas. Sometimes that's a little bit easier. Also, looking ahead, I can see that I'm going to have a little trouble on that edge. So I might want to take a piece of scratch paper, like my handy dandy pear, and this will allow me to paint right off of the edge without worrying about the table. So I've got a larger brush here, which is just going to cover the surface a lot faster. And I don't need to worry about getting anything on the table because I can go right up to the edge like that. These big brushes are also good for smoothing out areas. The little brushes can sometimes leave texture, which some people like, but if you want to clean it up, you can use a larger brush. Okay, I did the background of the top section, and looking at my cheat sheet, I can see that this part directly across on the pear needs to be yellow too. So I'm going to switch back to my detail brush, my round with the point on the end, so I can sneak into that part, and I'm going to paint this section. You might notice that I get a little water into my paint to loosen it up if it starts to stick. You don't want to have too much. It's not watercolor. It still needs to be a little bit of a paste, like a toothpaste, but a little bit of water sometimes can help it move freely. Okay, so there's our yellow. I am going to switch over to our red next. Like I said, I like to start with the primaries. So if yellow is here, red is going to be in this corner, and I like to double check yellow, yellow, orange, orange, red, orange, red. Good. So that means I need to really clean my brushes. I'll fast forward through this painting so you don't have to watch, but basically, now you will paint your red section. Okay, so I painted the background here, and now I need to do the inside of the pear on the opposite side. Okay, finally moving to blue. Blue is in the same spot opposite red in the other corner, but I can double check. it goes red, red, violet, violet, blue, violet, blue. So blue is going to be in this corner. Let's do it. Okay, so blue is going to be inside on this side in two different spots. It will be in the pear right here, and for me it will also be in the leaf. So just making a little note to myself where to paint. Again, making sure I'm not putting my hand in wet paint. I'm going to go ahead and fill these in. Okay, once you have the three primary color sections colored, I'm going to encourage you to pause and get some clean water because we're going to start working with yellows again and it can get murky real quick. So go ahead and pause and get yourself some clean water. Okay, now that you have your clean water, we're going to start our color mixing. I like to start with orange, and at this point in time, I want to make sure that I have my color wheel with me. You guys have a different color wheel. Yours is laminated, mine's from a book, but you want to have it by your side. So I've got this little guide right there, and then I've got my color wheel here. I've still got my paints, I've got my palette, I'm ready to go. When we mix our orange, yellow is the weaker color of this combination. Red is going to be the dominant color. So I'm going to need kind of a lot of yellow and then just a little bit of red. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to my yellow well. Now I'm not just going to squirt some red into the same container like it's ketchup and mustard. I actually want to mix in a separate container. And I'll tell you why. The reason is because you can control the color a little bit more. So I'm going to take a scoop of yellow, and then I can take the same brush, or a different brush is probably better practice, and I can take a little scoop of red. Notice I have way more yellow than I have red. Watch, you do not need a lot of red to make orange. So mix, 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 mix. You got to mix them all the way through. Sometimes there are hidden pockets of yellow or red. So really give it a good solid stir. If you can see stripes of red or yellow, then you have to keep mixing. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to hold it up to my color wheel, and I can see that that's pretty dead on. It might be a little bit more towards the red orange, so if I wanted to, I could add a little bit more yellow. And scoop that right there. And then mix it in, mix, 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 mix. Okay, try it again. That's pretty close. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint my orange sections, which are halfway between the red and the yellow. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint those two sections. Go ahead. All right, so now we're done with our orange. I got a little bit over the edge, that's fine. We'll cover it with the red orange in just a second. Okay, so next I think I want to do yellow orange, and that's pretty much halfway visually between yellow and orange. So I'm gonna need a little bit more yellow. So I'm gonna take a scoopy, I'm gonna take a big old gob of yellow. Actually might need more than that. As we discovered before, yellow's a pretty mild color, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit more to work with. And there's some orange in my brush still from the orange. So I'm betting if I just mix up that yellow in that same well with the brush that had some orange in it, we might end up with a nice yellow orange. Let's see. Mix, mix, mix. Really get all the color at the base. Mix, mix, mix. Sometimes I pause and kind of scrape it off. Okay, when it looks pretty mixed, I'm gonna hold it up. That's pretty good. All right, let's paint our yellow orange, which is going to be for me behind both of those sections and then right there. Let's do it. Okay, so I have my yellow orange in. Next I'm going to do my red orange. This is going to take some yellow and a little bit more red than before. So don't go heavy on the red. I think you'll find you still don't need very much to make a red orange. So I've got a little bit of yellow and really just a little bit of red. I can use these same brushes since they are full of orange. So let's mix that up. Mix, 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 mix. Really give it a good stir. Kind of move your brush along the edge of the well to get any color out of the top of the brush. And I'm gonna hold it up. That's a pretty good red orange. All right, here we go. Okay, so we're going to be switching from oranges to blues and greens. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brushes and my water, and then I'll come back ready for the next bit. Okie dokie, it's time to make some more colors. I'm just going to continue along this direction, and I'll go ahead and get my purple done. So I know I'm going to need some violet. We're going to, some blue as we start to move into the violets and the blue violets. So I'll put out a little more blue and maybe a little bit more red. Red is a stronger color than blue, so I'm going to need more blue than red. I also made a little bit of a mess here on my palette. I can take a damp paper towel, clean some of that up to give myself some room. I can also mix colors in this center area, and you can even use the lid of your palette, and you can even use the paper plate that we measured with now that we're done. This is not the best surface. We'll send you one that isn't colorful, but we'll send you a nice white one so that you can color mix on it. All right, it's time for violet. And as I said, blue is a weaker color than red, so I'm going to need a little bit more blue than red. I'm double checking that my brush is clean by dabbing it on that white paper towel. If there's still yellow in it, I'll rinse it again. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna grab some blue, like that, and then I'll grab some red, not as much red as blue, and let's give it a nice swirl. Purple's a funny one because it's kind of hard to see what it looks like when it's all clumped on top of each other. It just looks dark, but you can test it on the plastic to get a sense of what it looks like. Okay. This might be a little bit too blue. I might add a hint more of red, just a little bit. And then mix it in, mix, 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 mix. I can tell already it looks maybe too red. Oh no! This is the fun of color mixing, the kind of back and forth. I think that's pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint my violet, which is the background here of the yellow, and my object here on the top. So let's go ahead and paint those objects. Okay, there's violet. I'm gonna go ahead and keep mixing the rest of them. We know that we want blue violet to be kind of halfway visually between blue and violet. It should match this. And then we can go around on the rest of the color wheel. I'll do blue violet real quickly, and I think I'll just add some more blue to this violet we already have because it's looking pretty good. So let me just toss some blue in here and see what we end up with. So that color is pretty good, although it's not a ton of paint. I feel like I might run out of paint. So I'm actually gonna mix up a little bit more. It's better to have a slightly bigger batch than have to try to match your color midway through. You almost never get the same color. So I'm just gonna toss in a little more red and a little more blue, trying to keep it kind of heavy on the blue. Hopefully not too heavy on the blue. Let's give it a good stir. Okay, and holding it up, that looks awesome. All right, here goes blue violet. All right, there's blue violet. So I am ready to pause for the day. Sometimes these colors keep, sometimes they don't. Acrylic paint is pretty much plastic. So I recommend you can try to keep them if there's like a big fresh goop of it like this, but these are probably gonna dry out. So you can try to keep them, but I recommend just cleaning your brushes and cleaning your palette. So I'm gonna make sure that all of my brushes are clean, and I'm gonna take this to the sink and clean it up too. You, of course, do not have to stop for the day, but when you're ready, make sure that you clean and dry your brushes and clean and dry your palette. A note about brushes, you don't want to leave them face down in the water. I know I'm doing that now, but that's just because I'm on my way to the sink to clean them. It's bad for them if you leave them in the water, so don't drown them, please. As far as color mixing, I think you guys can handle it from here. You just want to make sure that you're checking your color wheel before you paint. You're holding up your paintbrush to it. Yours is laminated, so you can even do a little dab of paint on there just to make sure that it's accurate, and that you're checking your brainstorming sheet to make sure that things are going in the right location. So always double check. Once you get to the tertiary colors, you can say, well, what's halfway between red and violet? Red, violet, and that makes it a little easier, but always double check here on your paper before you start to paint. All right, we will meet back once this is completely painted and go from there.